Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 35 of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. High atop the beautiful Houston, Texas, here on December 6th, in the aftermath of Texas getting run off the court by Marquette. But we are not going to be talking too much college basketball today, if at all. Didn't look good. Wasn't a great game. We don't need to talk about it right now because there's so much other positive things that we can be talking about, such as this Texas Longhorn football team, which, as you heard in our last episode, is in the college football playoff. And there are so many rumors going around in the transfer portal and in recruiting right now. The Aggies are decimated. Many Aggies have started to leave that program. So we'll talk maybe a little bit about that as well. There are a bunch of quarterbacks in the portal. But before we do any of that, and there is some breaking news that we're going to have to get to here in a second, that I may or may not have connections to. Emmy Nixon, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm feeling re-energized. I'm feeling, I got my first workout in about 7 months yesterday. I'm feeling fantastic, and I'm ready for this. I think the topics we have planned today are just about as good as any we've had in the last month plus of content. So I'm excited for it.
All right. Do you want to hear the breaking news that I teased before we went live? So this has been in the works for a while, but here it is. Okay. There have been rumors today. Here it is. The New York Yankees have acquired superstar outfielder Juan Soto in a trade from the San Diego Padres. Sources tell ESPN deal is done, and now the Yankees get to pair Soto with Aaron Judge in the outfield and will feature two of the best hitters in baseball. That is from Jeff Passan, ESPN.
Wow. Whoa. That's
now here's the thing.
Okay.
A bunch of young pitching.
Okay.
One thing about the Yankees from this past year is pitching wasn't really the issue. It was an all-time bad Yankees offense. Like, it was horrendous. It was bad. It was really just Glaber and Judge, and that was about it. And Judge was hurt for a third of the season. So you take out Judge, and it was bleak for most of the year. A bunch of young pitching from the Yankees system is going back to the Padres in the deal, along with Kyle Higashioka, who has been the Yankees platoon catcher here for a while, and Michael King, which was a very valuable – he is the headliner for the Padres, and he got some starts at the end of the season for the Yankees, pitched very well, but he is a Swiss Army knife. You can put him in the bullpen. He could start for them. So they are getting pitching, but – the caveat here for the Yankees, and we'll have to see what Scott Boras, he's kind of like who's the agent in basketball? Rich Paul. He's kind of like the
Yeah.
Rich Paul of baseball. Soto is in a contract year. So we'll have to see. I'm not sure if negotiations, if there will be any talks of extensions before the season starts. Of course, there's a bunch of time for them to figure that out. But it is, for as of now, a 1-year rental for Juan Soto for the New York Yankees. But they did make the deal. This is something that they had to do. They had to go make a big move after what was one of the worst Yankee seasons in the past 30 years.
Yeah.
So, any reaction to that before we get into what we really want to talk about today?
I mean, agreed, man. I mean, they had to go make a splash. Selfishly, I would love to see Juan Soto not sign the deal, just so we can get like a Kawhi Leonard Toronto type of situation in baseball. I think that could be really fun. Uh, get interesting around the trade deadline. Get some like spicy stuff going there. But I think he will sign the deal, though. I think that won't be an issue playing for an organization like the Yankees, who would say no to that. Um, I'm just trying to think of the Padres' perspective, and wow, I mean, they gave up a lot to go get Juan Soto. I mean, and now it's all for naught. But you got 2 years out of him, and that's just. I mean, you got to the NLCS, and that's kind of it. Now you move forward. You try to get the most out of Tatis Jr. And I don't know. You got to move forward with some extra pitching now, because you had some underachieving pitching at times.
And so, last note before we get into Texas is last night the Yankees acquired Alex Verdugo, who you may or may not know from the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
And that was alarm bells, alarm bells, alarm bells, because if you know anything about baseball, and you don't have to know much, the Yankees and the Red Sox making the trade, what the hell?
Yeah.
But the Yankees, as the winter meetings have been progressing and as these talks between the Yankees and the Padres have been going on for Soto, I think a lot of Yankees fans, including myself, thought that Verdugo, who is an outfielder, the Yankees would try to flip him in a deal for Soto. Like that would be one of the pieces that the Yankees would use to flip for Soto, because if you're the Padres, you lose an outfielder. Soto's an outfielder. So, Verdugo's still a very good major league player. Would be that, oh, you're going to lose Soto, but you still get a really good player in return. But one of the Yankees' plans coming into this offseason was they needed 2 outfielders, and they needed to both be left-handed because there was really no balance in that lineup last year. And by the end of last year, with Judge out and Stanton pretty much too fragile at this point in his career to play any sort of outfield defense, the Yankees had to get some major league outfield talent. And not only did they do that, they got one of the best players of all time, or at this point in his career, at the age of 25, he's on that track. So enough of that. I just wanted to put that out there. It feels good that we got to talk some baseball for a little bit.
A little bit of baseball. I thought you were going to drop Cody Bellinger news on me. That's what I thought this was going to be.
Well, I think this is the first big domino of the offseason. It is. So I think
things are about to go.
The stove is hot, and things are about to start moving much quicker now that this is done. So, with all that being said, we've got, for the next 30-ish minutes, we're going to talk some Texas football. So, where do you want to start? Let's just start here. The Longhorns are in the playoff. And um, I have heard that Xavier Worthy will be ready to go when uh, bowl practices start. So the Texas and as will all the playoff teams, you only get 15 practices leading up to the semifinals. So Texas is waiting till the middle of December to start really prepping for this game. So about 2 weeks out, they're going to start practicing and game prepping for this game. Now I'm sure there's a lot of game planning already going on, but Texas isn't practicing yet. But if you remember in the fourth quarter of that Oklahoma State game, Xavier Worthy went down with what was an ankle injury, some kind of ankle sprain, and it was reported yesterday that he's good to go when practices start. So that's very good news if you're Texas. Now the question still remains: Ryan Watts, who did not play in the Oklahoma State game, and he's been banged up here for the past couple of weeks. And then Austin Jordan, who, if you remember the blocked extra point in the Iowa State game,
Yeah.
Austin Jordan was the guy who picked the ball up and ran it back for the safety. And he's been really good on special teams all year and has played some corner as well for Texas. His outlook isn't looking as optimistic as Watts. But I think as long as Texas has Watts and Worthy, they will be fine. So your reaction to Worthy being okay and this injury news to start us off.
Well, Worthy's a big one. He's a worthy one to talk about. No, I was trying to make a pun there, but um, I mean, yeah, it's huge. The Watts thing. What was Watts' injury again? He's been out for a little while now, and it's like it feels like he's been kind of getting banged up here every time he's played. Really, I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really actually know exactly what his injury. Texas is very protective with when it
yeah,
comes to these kind of injuries. I'll have to do some more looking into that while we talk about the transfers. I think my guess would be that he plays
yeah.
in this
My guess would be that
semifinal.
as well.
If it were any other bowl game, as Ryan Watts is a player who's going to be bound for the NFL after once the conclusion of this season arrives, he's expected to go to the NFL. My guess would be even if he's not 100%, say he's 90 or 95%, and maybe even less than that going into this semifinal game, my guess is he would try to battle through whatever he's going through to play in this game. If it were any other bowl game, if Texas did not qualify for the playoff and it were any other bowl game, I would think otherwise. But since it's the opportunity to compete for a national championship, these players view that in a little bit of a different light. So there's some injury news to start off, but we've got plenty of portal updates to give you guys here tonight. Man, where do we even start? I don't even really know. Let's start with the quarterbacks. I believe it was Monday morning where two more quarterbacks were added into the portal. Kyle McCord from Ohio State entered his name into the portal. I've heard buzz for Nebraska going to play under Matt Rule. Nebraska really needs a quarterback to really for that rebuild really to take off.
Yeah,
And I've heard Kyle McCord is going to probably visit Nebraska here in the coming days. And then Dillon Gabriel was the big one. The Oklahoma quarterback who was a Heisman finalist for some of this year, or a worthy Heisman candidate for some of this year. He entered his name into the portal. And the buzz that I'm getting there is Oregon is an early favorite for Dillon Gabriel, as he will go
interesting.
most likely to take Bo Nix's spot at Oregon. So what do you think of those two?
Well, Dillon Gabriel is definitely the one that is more intriguing to me for sure. The Oregon fit, I think, is very interesting just because they do love to spread it out. And you're asked to make a lot of throws from hash to far sideline. And I think there's going to be some adjustment there in terms of the style of offense they play with Dillon Gabriel. Um, Dillon Gabriel doesn't have a weak arm by any means. He has good velocity, good timing, but there's a difference between a guy like Bo Nix and Dillon Gabriel. There's a big difference there in terms of physical ability. So I think he could be very successful there, but uh, I also think Oregon will have to make some adjustments.
Another rumor that I've heard and that has been confirmed the past couple of days is that Will Howard, who I do view in kind of this tier one of transfer portal quarterbacks, along with Gabriel, along with Cam Ward, you could put DJU in there if you wanted to, along with, I don't even know that I put Kyle McCord in that group actually, but
Yeah.
Will Howard, the conference champion winner at K-State last year. He's won a conference championship and is really experienced as a quarterback. Lincoln Riley flew into Manhattan earlier this week to meet with Will Howard. So keep an eye on Will Howard and USC and something potentially maybe developing there. I'm not 100% on any of these. I think official visits and things of that nature still need to take place. But I'm just telling you what I hear. And I consider myself to be fairly plugged in to the realm of college football. I spend a couple hours a day at the very least. I hate to admit, just reading message boards and looking at transfer portal stuff and recruiting stuff. But I think that it's very interesting because this, I think, all goes back to a Texas conversation. And this is why, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Arch Manning's staying. We knew that. That was reported yesterday by 24/7 Sports, but we already knew that months ago. If Quinn Ewers were to return, which has been the overlying thought, right, for the past couple of weeks, is that things are trending towards him coming back next year, more so than going to the NFL.
Right.
We have to think about the Malik Murphy part of this. Now, before I get to that, one thing I do want to mention is Sark was very clear at the beginning of this year that, and he has been clear about this since his first year, the 5-7 disaster year in 2021, is that once you enter the portal to go somewhere else, you're not coming back to Texas. Once you enter the portal, you're out. And that's been his stance. But now that Texas finds itself in a semifinal game here in about 27-ish days, about 4 weeks from right now, Sark, and this has been confirmed by sourcing, will let players enter the portal and still remain with the team through the finish of wherever their season ends, whether that's the semifinal game against Washington or going on to the national championship. So these Texas players can enter the portal and still remain with the team. And it's interesting because I think once these dominoes start to fall, and they already kind of have, these spots are going to fill up fairly quickly. Like, they're not going to remain open forever. And so if Malik Murphy wants to enter his name into the transfer portal, I don't know if it would make a lot of sense to wait all the way until possibly middle of January once Texas, say, wins the national championship to do so, because I think these spots are going to fill up fairly quickly. So
right.
I don't know. It's an interesting part of this dynamic.
Right. Yeah. I think regardless, Malik Murphy will be starting somewhere next year. But I do agree in terms of Power Five schools and just competitive Power Five schools. I think if Malik Murphy wants a quality spot, he's got to act sooner rather than later. But I know it's a really tough decision from the standpoint of leaving your teammates and all that type of stuff. And I'm sure there's an element of I don't want to be a distraction to the team, but I think it's the right decision for him. I don't know the guy, but from the outside looking in, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about that once we know more about that. In terms of portal rumors for Texas, which I think if you're a Texas fan, that's what you're here for. Yesterday, Clemson starting safety Andrew Makuba entered the portal. And let me just give you some background. That turned Texas fans' heads. Like, that got their attention because, and this is why. Andrew Makuba, formerly of Austin LBJ High School. He's an Austin, Texas native, first of all. And he chose Clemson over the Longhorns back in 2021 in his recruitment. He went to Clemson to play for Dabo and has been a 3-year starter there, but Texas was a close second in his recruitment, and he has been a 3-year starter and a really, really good and productive player for Clemson. Over 3 years, he's recorded 149 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, a sack, 20 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception, and has played over 1,700 snaps in over 31 starts of college football. He's a really experienced, really good, proven player at a very, very good program. And sources within the industry have said that the Longhorns absolutely have an interest in revisiting the Andrew Makuba kind of rekindling that interest that they had when they were recruiting him back in 2021, and that there's already been contact between the two sides. And here's another interesting note. Makuba's former high school coach at Austin LBJ High School is now on the Texas staff. Jamal Finner is UT's director of high school relations in recruiting. So Andrew Makuba, who's a very, very good player, is someone to keep an eye on now that, especially, and this was some other news that has come down since we talked last on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Jalen Catalon entered his name into the transfer portal. We can talk a little bit more about that situation here in a second. But Andrew Makuba, man, he's a really, really good player. And I think if you told me going into next year that Derek Williams, the 5-star freshman from the state of Louisiana, who's been playing really good football this year, and it kind of passed up Catalon in some areas for playing time on the football field, and Andrew Makuba were the safeties going into next year, given that a very good player in Jaron Thompson is graduating. Given that you're losing Jaron Thompson and Jalen Catalon and potentially Katon Crawford at the end of this year, I think looking at all those factors, given that his high school coach is part of the Texas administrative staff, given that he's from Austin, Texas, given that Texas was a close second in his recruitment going back to 2021, given that it's an area of need or will be an area for need for Texas after the season ends, I think that one is very, very easily going to come together here in the next week or so. Your reaction?
I think it's something worth pursuing. Absolutely. I mean, the connection through Austin LBJ, I mean, that's extremely legitimate. I mean, the fact that the head coach of this guy in high school for 4 years is on the Texas staff. I mean, The connections have been there for a long time now. This was this would have been one of Tom Herman's recruits, I believe.
Yes,
Is one of his last recruits. But regardless, I think the draw for Texas is Sark, this team, what we built here, plus NIL. So
absolutely.
that's the key here. You're going to go out and get Yakuba because of those things.
Hmm. And he will be a player that will want, I'm assuming, an NIL deal, and Texas will certainly be able to give that to him.
Right.
I think a crystal ball was entered earlier this morning already for Makuba to transfer to Texas. Um, I think of all the targets that we've heard of so far and that have been confirmed within the industry, that's the one that's probably most likely to fall first. And I think that'd be a very, very good addition for Texas. He makes the Texas Longhorns football team better going into next season. Um, they're going to need some real experience at safety going the next year, and he can give that to them. Um, let's talk about the wide receiver position, because the wide receiver position is going to be an area where Texas is going to dip their toes into within the portal. Two names that you need to know. In the last couple of days, South Carolina star Antwane Juice Wells entered his
Yep.
name into the
Yep.
transfer portal. He was uh, uh, all SEC freshman first team in his freshman year at South Carolina. And then Purdue playmaker Deion Burks. Those are the two names that Texas is really pursuing at the wide receiver position in the transfer portal. It has been reported that Deion Burks, who's more of a speedster, kind of similar to Xavier Worthy, kind of in that build as a receiver, very speedy, can take the top of off of a defense, creates explosive plays. Kind of a guy that you would kind of envision in Steve Sarkisian offense. Can be used in a variety of different ways. Sark can use his speed in a lot of different ways. It's been reported already that Texas has offered Deion Burks. We'll see if a visit takes place there here in the next week. But the word, here's what you really need to know. I think Juice Wells is the player that Texas has really latched on to. And the two finalists there, I believe, are going to be Tennessee and Texas. Um, I think at the end of the day, um, Texas is probably the favorite there because I think they can do more in NIL, and there's probably more of an opportunity uh, given that Quinn Ewers is going to be returning, and that I don't know. I just feel like this has been Texas from the get go, and I think the power of the Texas NIL situation will help the Longhorns close out this recruitment of Juice Wells. So I can tell. I don't want to bore you. I don't mean to
No, no,
bore
no,
you.
no. What's actually happening is the surgery I got on my eye. My eye's really dry at the moment,
I see.
um, and I have my eye drops downstairs. But that if you see me closing my eye, that's why. So
Okay.
I'm awake.
Deion Burks,
Uh,
Antwane Wells. You have any thoughts?
yeah, I'll start with Juice Wells. He's a stud, man. There's no question about it. I think if I remember correctly, this was pretty early in the season, but against Georgia, I think he had a pretty big game, if I remember correctly. Um, I mean, anytime you got a nickname like Juice, there's something to that. And first team All Freshman SEC. I mean, that's legit. You get this guy, you have him in the building for 2 years at minimum, at minimum, and I mean, easily worth taking a chance on. Has a year of experience as a sophomore. Didn't take a redshirt year, so he's straight into it. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And then Deion Burks, the connection with Hudson Card there, I think is interesting. Hudson Card is a starter for Purdue now.
Yep.
So I think that's an interesting nugget in this situation as well. So maybe Hudson Card has told him about Sark and all those types of things. Um, I think that's the interesting part of it. Obviously, the Xavier Worthy type of fit, the replacement of the receiver that Xavier Worthy is, that's not an easy thing. But I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but I've seen his line on Prize Picks. it's like 75 yards per game or something like that. He puts up numbers, is my point. So he's I haven't seen him play. I'm gonna be honest, but good play.
Interesting situation. And, these players talk to each other through back channels and
Yeah,
they have their agents and things go on behind the scenes. But
yeah,
Quinn Ewers followed Juice Wells on Instagram a couple days ago. So could that be a sign of things to come? Possibly. Not for sure, but possibly.
yeah.
Okay. A couple more notes that I want to hit on before we get out of here, because I don't want to drag this on too long.
Oh no,
But,
I mean I think this conversation is great.
but a pair of Longhorns did go into the portal yesterday. Jalen Catalon and Xavier Bryce. Jalen Catalon being a safety that they got through the portal last year from Arkansas. And then Xavier Bryce, who was highly recruited. I think he was a 4-star in the 2022 class. Redshirt freshman. Redshirt last year, freshman this year. Wasn't really getting on the field a whole lot. With the depth that Texas has in that secondary and a bunch of the young talent that they have, including guys like Malik Muhammad and Derek Williams, who you're both seeing get major playing time for this Texas team. He entered the portal. I'm sure he'll land on his feet somewhere else. He's a really good kid, and I'm rooting for him. But Jalen Catalon, I think, is the interesting one here. It just wasn't happening for Jalen Catalon. We saw some flashes of Catalon, and I think at his best, Catalon is kind of that downhill thumper type of safety that's really good in run support and kind of I don't really know what Catalon is as a player because
my friend said something really funny about Catalon the other day. He said, at best, he's Jamal Adams, and at worst, he's Jamal Adams. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
I don't think he's wrong there.
Yeah.
Here's the thing on Catalon. I just don't know. I feel like with his physical style of play that his body has been able to hold up.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because his first year at Arkansas, it looked like he was a star in the making. And ever since then, it just really hasn't been the same. And I think a lot of that has to do with health. But you look at this situation at Texas, like this is the sign of a healthy program. When guys like Derek Williams, who was borderline 5-star, top 3 player in the state of Louisiana in last year's class, right up there with Arch Manning, when he steps onto the field and starts making an impact right away, and he kind of ends up boxing out a guy like Jalen Catalon for many variety of reasons. That's a sign that Texas is going in a very, very, very good direction, that the future is bright.
Yeah, definitely. And
we've seen Malik Muhammad, who is also a borderline 5-star.
Yeah.
He's stepped onto the field lately in place of Ryan Watts, and he's gotten his opportunity, and he's playing really, really damn good football at this point. He had an interception in the Texas Tech game. He made an excellent play on a ball that he had to adjust to on, I think it was a shot down the right sideline.
Back
And
shoulder shot, wasn't it?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He was
Another
beat
one.
and he recovered. He
Yeah.
recovered and made the play. So, man, I think when you look at next year and you could potentially have a secondary with Andrew Makuba, Derek Williams in his second year with all this experience that he's gotten in the back end with Malik Muhammad as a sophomore and Terrence Brooks going into
Yeah.
his third year. Woo! Woo!
Yeah. Yeah. That's legit, man. It's looking really, really good. I want to add one thing about your comment about this being a healthy program. I think that's the observation that's really interesting because for years, me and my dad have had these conversations clamoring about you got to be able to evaluate and get your best guys onto the field, regardless of where they're at in their careers, who they are. Doesn't matter. I think the bottom line is, you know, as much as I have gotten on Sark for some time management stuff and little things here and there, he has done that brilliantly. Him and his staff, they have evaluated talent. They have recruited guys that fit his program and gotten those guys onto the field, developed them in a way that makes sense, makes them better, gets them ready to play. And it not only bodes well for the team right now, but it also is going to make the program much better in the future because recruits are going to see that and they're going to be like, why wouldn't I go to Texas? I can go compete for a spot right now.
Yeah. No. I think other areas of interest for Texas in the portal. We know about receiver. We obviously know they want to address safety.
Yeah.
That's well known at this point. They are going to need to address defensive line. I don't have really any names for you as of right now, but Texas will address, especially the interior of their defensive line with T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy likely leaving after at the conclusion of the college football playoff. That's going to be an area of need, especially going into the SEC next year. And they have some guys. I mean, I think Vernon Broughton will do just fine stepping into a role. We've seen flashes from him this year. Maybe Alfred Collins will stay back. And that would significantly help Texas. He's a really talented player who's just not really gotten his chance to shine yet behind Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. But Texas will definitely, I think, add a defensive lineman or two through the portal. And then linebacker is also going to be an area of need. Obviously, what we've seen from Anthony Hill is very, very encouraging going into next year. He's obviously going to be a starter, but Jalen Ford is gone. So they're going to need a linebacker in the portal.
The thing I wonder about with Anthony Hill is he better suited as a pass rusher? Is the question that has popped up in my head. And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think if he bulked up, we would have a much better idea of where he would be best suited as a player. Because right now, it's great. You know, he's a freshman. He's getting on the field. He's making an impact. As a freshman, that's all you want. But moving forward, I just wonder, is this going to be more of a Micah Parsons situation, which isn't a problem. Let's oh great, like I welcome that, of course. But that's what I think about when I think about Anthony Hill moving forward and what his evaluation as a prospect looks like and how that will evolve.
One more name that I want to bring up, and you're absolutely right about that. One more name, though, that I want to bring up. We're going to have to call this portal segment something. We're going to have to come up with the name for it because we're going to be talking about it here for a while over the next month or two. But Trey Moore, who, if you're not familiar, an edge linebacker type from UTSA entered the portal either yesterday or the day before. He's out of Smithson Valley High School, lightly recruited pass rush prospect from he received offers from UTSA, North Texas, a number of Ivy League universities, but he's become one of the top edge rush prospects in college football. 6'3", 235, named
235.
freshman.
Interesting.
He was named a freshman All-American by various media outlets, racking up 59 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks. And this year, he was one of college football's best pass rushers. 45 tackles, 17 and a half tackles for loss, and 14 sacks. 14 sacks.
Wow.
14 sack guy is in the portal. He was conference player of the year. Now, here's the one thing I don't know. There are Texas connections there. We have heard that Texas might have some interest, but with signing day now less than 3 weeks away, with what Texas has now in their edge class coming into this year or going into next year with a guy like Colin Simmons.
Right.
The reason Colin Simmons is coming to Texas is because, one of the reasons at least, there's NIL and a bunch of other things, but one of the reasons he's coming is because
he did Alabama.
He can play right away.
Oh.
Texas has said you're going to play a lot right away. And so part of me wonders, and I don't know this to be 100% true, but part of me wonders if Sark is going to be very possibly protective of potentially blocking a guy like Colin Simmons this close to signing day from I don't know. It just kind of feels a little.
It is an interesting thought. It's a tough one. My philosophy would be that it's just tough to really do that. You have the opportunity to bring in this player, and it's like 14 and a half sacks speaks for itself. 6'3", 235 is interesting. I would have to look into what his actual body type is. That does seem kind of like low weight wise for me. But regardless, I do think you just go get all the talent you can and let everything work itself out.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think that Colin Simmons is full 1,000% bought into Texas. Like a big part of his decision was he wants to stay close to his family because his brother has special needs. He has a really close relationship with his brother. Wants to take care of his family with the NIL money that he's about to earn, and rightfully so.
Right.
And he wants to play for Steve Sarkisian. He's seen the success that Texas has had on the football field. He's been at numerous games since his commitment. He was at the Big 12 championship game. Or no, he was at the Cowboys game, the Thursday night game coming into the weekend against Seattle. Took a picture with Micah Parsons. Has been very keeping tabs on Steve Sarkisian and this football team throughout the season. And one of the things that he said when he committed to Texas, when there were still some questions after he committed, whether or not, he'd be a guy that could potentially, flip, or that Texas would really need to do a good job of holding on to going into signing day. There really hasn't been any movement there. LSU was his, like, it was Texas or LSU, Texas or LSU. And he's totally locked in. I think the NIL opportunity is too good. It's a lot better than what he can get at LSU. And now he's seen the success that Texas has had. And one of the things he said was, I want to see Texas compete for a national championship. And look where they are right now.
Here we are.
So, I think that's certainly exciting. There's so many good things going on at the University of Texas right now. The volleyball team is in the Sweet 16. They're trying to defend their championship. The women's basketball team is ranked top 5 in the country. They got their first ever win over UConn over the weekend in dominant fashion. They're undefeated. The Texas men's basketball team doesn't look all too great right now. They're going to get the Sioux back here in a little bit. And I still think that by the time we get to conference play, there's a good chance that they're going to be one of those teams that might not look even like a top 25 team right now, but once we get into conference play and they get healthy, they're going to be a team you don't want to play down the road. I have full confidence in Rodney Terry and what he's doing with this program. We know what Texas is doing on the basketball side of recruiting. We talked about that a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
They're going to potentially sign, or actually already have signed, a top 5 class in basketball. There's so many good things. Texas is in the college football playoff. There's so many things to look forward to if you're a Texas Longhorn sports fan.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we do this, man. I think since we've started this podcast, I think it's been 3 national titles since we've started this podcast. Women's track and field, volleyball, and then I think there was a third one, but
I think it was men's golf last year. I think it was men's golf.
Right, men's golf. Right,
because I have a shirt. I got the men's golf national championship shirt. Maybe I'll wear that on the next dit hole.
Yeah. Why not?
I should. No, you're right. And we could add a football national championship to that here in about a month or so. It's possible. It seems the popular pick going into things as of right now is a Texas-Alabama rematch in the Natty, which, can you imagine the week of hype leading up to that game? With the history between Texas and Alabama going back to 2009 and what happened to Colt McCoy in the BCS national title game, what happened this year in Tuscaloosa, what happened last year in Austin. The history between the two teams, with Texas going into the SEC. And what I think is actually interesting is that in one matchup, you have current Big Ten versus current SEC. And in the other semifinal, you have future Big Ten, future SEC. I just think it's kind of funny the way that shaped out. So,
yeah.
Anything else? Anything else?
Parting shots. You mentioned we should name the transfer segment something.
Okay.
I think we spend the last 5 minutes here brainstorming. What do you think?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So, first one. I don't know if I like it that much, but it's the first one that popped in my head. Warping the portal.
What was it?
Warping the portal.
Interesting.
It's kind of like got a sci-fi kind of vibe. And by the way, if you're watching, give suggestions. That would be great. If you have anything that pops up in your head.
Because this portal segment likely will be a reoccurring segment here for the next month or two.
Yeah, this part of the year.
One of the names, and I'm not going to steal. I'm not stealing this because I don't want to do that. But
Yeah.
one of the names that particular Texas channels have used is Portal Combat.
Ooh.
Like Mortal Kombat, I guess, but Portal Combat. But I don't really want to be a copycat. I could if I wanted to, but that's just an idea to throw out there. Gosh, I don't know.
I'm trying to think of like alliteration, portal pop.
You know what? If you think of something here in the last 5-ish minutes, blurt it out. If you have ideas in the chat, please throw them in there. I'm gonna have to think about that. But I want to talk about for the last 5 or so minutes, kind of what the future holds for the podcast because you called me earlier. Our schedule is probably going to look quite a little bit different than it has here in the past month or two, where we've really been on a roll with
Yeah.
the schedule that we have been. But, it's not to anyone's fault or anything. You have a great opportunity
Yeah.
that you want to pursue with this caddying opportunity that you told us about on the last episode of Dit Hole. So
Mhm.
I kind of just want to talk about, your feelings, your thoughts on what the future holds for not in look, this podcast ain't going away.
Oh yeah, no.
Whether I have to do it alone, I mean, if I have to do it solo, if I had to find some other guests, if Emmy and I have to maybe do one podcast a month here for the next couple months together, I don't really know. We haven't talked about it. We haven't gotten that far yet. But
Right.
your thoughts on what's going to be, just what's going through your mind?
Yeah. So I think right now, so here's what a typical day looks like for me right now. So for a morning shift, I go 5:30 to noon, and during that time, my player works as a club pro. He works all day at the driving range pretty much. So during that time, he's hitting golf balls. He's hitting like 1,000 golf balls per day. I'm like during my shift constantly checking in on him, seeing how he's doing with his swing, all that type of stuff. Um, we I get off work 12. He gets off work at 2. Those 2 hours, I go work with him on whatever he's working on that day. And we've already talked about setting a schedule and doing all of that. And then 2 p.m. hits, he gets off work. We go play golf, last 3.5 hours of the day or so. Then we go work out, which is something I've been meaning to get back to for a long time, but that's been good for me for sure. So I work out with him. I've basically been put in charge of preparing workouts for him as well. So that's been a fun ride as well. But I think for me, in terms of the podcast, to get to the point, it's just what happened yesterday. I don't want to be a common thing. I want to basically have 2 or 3 set days per week where I'm doing my podcast. Like I'll tell my player, like I'm doing my podcast this day at 9 p.m. for example. So I plan my day like this, and this. So I won't be able to do the pod as often as we have been doing, like you said. But it's going to be about what we were doing, say, a few months ago. So 2 times a week, that's going to be what I shoot for. That's going to be most likely what it's going to be. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. It just kind of sucks that we get on a roll here and then, things change.
be honest with you, when you called me, because you didn't go into that much detail when you
Oh, right.
called me earlier, I thought it was going to be like, man, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if
No,
I'm
no,
going to be
no.
able to record podcasts
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, no,
Like
no.
that's where my mind immediately went, which is why I was kind of
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know what to
So
say. But now that you say that, it makes me feel
okay,
a little bit better.
okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. I still. I mean, we've put so much into this thing. You know, we're what 203 episodes into the Raw Prospect podcast. We're 35
35.
episodes
35.
into Did Hole. You've done like I'd say 15 to 20 of those solo. Um, so I enjoy doing this, and I think
So do
when
I.
I'm out on the road doing whatever I'm doing with this caddy stuff, taking the time doing a podcast, it'll be like a little break for me, you know. And the good news is we have this restream subscription for the next year. So yeah, I mean, regardless of what happens, we'll have this subscription for the full year. And if either of us want to just be like, hey, I'm gonna record, just go and do it. Just go and hit record, and that's how it'll be.
Yeah, it's a podcast will continue, just not as
Yep.
often. That's the gist of it. So we'll Emmy and I talk a lot. You guys would be a lot. I mean, you'd be surprised how much we talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
we're probably beating a dead horse at times, with how much we plan and talk about uh, the schedule for our podcasts during the week. Because now we're both working and schedules get weird, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we've been pretty flexible in figuring out times to record, even if it's close to midnight sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how dedicated we are. Um, but no, it makes me feel a lot better now that you say that.
Yeah. I
Even
think.
even if it's only once a week, man. Even if it's only once a week and I have to do everything else solo, I'm totally fine with that, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah. I maybe I was a little dramatic earlier over the phone, but I just it had been something that was eating at me, you know, and I just needed to come out and just be transparent with you, you know. So
Absolutely. And I appreciate that.
yeah,
Um this I don't let's not even do that because I don't want to get like emotional or
yeah,
whatever. It's just kind of weird. But
yeah,
what I will say is I wouldn't be doing this without you, and I don't think you'd be doing this without me.
nope,
So that's the reason we started this, because we like talking sports. Even if
yeah,
sometimes it feels like we're just talking to each other on camera, uh, that's what we like to do, man.
yeah,
That's why we do this, and it makes me feel better that we get some viewers in our live streams, even if it's not anything special, even if it's only one or two people.
yeah.
It makes
I
me
mean,
feel like. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
makes us feel like we're doing something right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, think about where we started, man. I mean, sixth grade, we meet each other in Miss Polk, the big old bug eyes, right? Uh, yeah. We just go out and we predict every single NFL game as we walked around that big old football field behind Canyon Ridge Middle School, as everybody else was playing football, playing basketball, doing whatever. We were talking about the NFL and whatever the fuck was going on. It was glorious, man. Oh my gosh.
and going from starting this podcast on Twitch, where
Yeah.
we talk for 2.5 hours about college
Dude.
football,
Oh, I
and
cannot believe we started this on Twitch.
we
Like we were just,
spent. I think
hey man, let's start a podcast. I was like, oh,
one of our first episodes was over 2 hours on Twitch where we previewed the college football season, and we were kind of beating a dead horse to an extent.
yeah,
Not to use that analogy too much, but to where we are now,
we have came a long way.
where
Yeah,
we are so intricate. We're like the restream thing at this point is like easy for us, and
yeah,
that
it's been super smooth. I mean, like part of me is like, I wished it was a little cheaper, but it's just like any other hobby. You put money into it, you put passion into it, and whether you get that money back doesn't matter. You get back what you like. I mean, these moments right here, like today, like it's priceless, man. That's what it is.
absolutely, absolutely. So we'll of course keep you guys updated on our social media, um, on our schedule moving forward. But that's the gist of it. I wanted to get that out
Yeah,
at the end here so that uh, the people know, because you did call me earlier, and I think it's something that we should be
yeah. Be out
we're
there. Yeah,
transparent with each other. We got to be transparent with our audience. So
yeah,
if you only see Emmy and I say once a week here for the next couple of weeks at the very least, or maybe even twice a week, rather than 3 or 4 times a week, it's for a good reason. And we'll adjust. We've always been able to adjust. I think that's been one of the areas that we have always excelled in. So we will adjust and we'll move forward, and we'll still be here talking sports like we love to do.
oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so to end this thing, I don't know. This is probably the least excited I've been to watch a Steelers game for this game tomorrow. It's
Yeah,
probably the least excited I've I've been to watch. I mean, even through the really tough times last year, year before, going all the
are
way
y'all
back.
playing the Ravens tomorrow or someone else?
We're playing the Patriots tomorrow, and
Ah,
the over point total with Trubisky and Bailey Zappi is, I think, the lowest for a Thursday night game, or any game for that matter, since 1993. I think the over under total is about 30 right now. And there's, with Pickett out, with Mac Jones benched, with Najee Harris potentially out tomorrow, with all the Steelers injuries that they're dealing with. Uh, this is probably the least excited I've been to watch a Steelers game. Now, that being said, even if I'm
like
not,
like you're gonna do it. Like let's be.
I'll
You're
probably
not
have
missing
it
the fucking
on.
game.
I'll have it on, but I don't know. There's a good chance that I will be doing other things while that thing is going on. I won't be
Yeah, yeah.
totally invested in that.
Do
And
not put yourself through that pain, dude. Do
I don't know if I
not.
will. I might be
No.
talking about other things here on this channel, including this baseball news that we got tonight. That probably make me a lot happier talking about the Juan Soto deal on a podcast than it would watching that game. But who knows? Maybe Mitch Trubisky plays the game of his life tomorrow, and it
I mean,
revitalizes. I don't
to
know.
be honest, streaming Bears Vikings the other night on Monday Night Football was absolutely hilarious. I I honestly, if my schedule opened up by any chance, I would be so down to live stream that. But I know, like as a Steelers fan, like you probably, like as you said, and you're rightfully so. You want to do other things, and you don't want to be fully invested in this thing because this is gonna be painful to watch. Oh my,
That's the reason. It's
yeah,
not that I'm not saying you are saying this or anyone else, but for the people out there, it's not that I wavering at all.
Oh,
On
no. Yeah.
being bought in on the Steelers as a fan or anything. It's just, I don't know. I've already put myself through
The
two and a
Matt
half
Canada
years,
era.
2.5 years of Matt Canada. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to put myself through more pain tomorrow watching Mitch Trubisky. Now, to be fair, and I hate to say this because I want Kenny Pickett to be successful, but I don't know how much of a drop off there honestly is between Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. I know both aren't great at all, but I don't know.
Yeah, that really sucks to say, but I mean,
All right, well, enough of that.
yeah.
So the point there was keep an eye on for maybe like a solo podcast from me while that game is going on, because I don't know if I want to ruin what was already been a very, 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 very good week for me with the
Yeah.
Longhorns getting into the playoff,
Oh, yeah.
the winning a Big 12 championship. I know this isn't. There probably aren't a whole lot of Yankees fans that listen to this podcast, but with this Juan Soto thing going on now, I've had a pretty good week so far.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
that I want to ruin that tomorrow, but we'll see. So with all that being said, hook 'em horns, guys. A lot to look
Hook 'em.
forward to in the world of Longhorn sports.
Yes, sir.
I did have an idea that I am going to pitch to Emmy once we get off the podcast for our next hole together, whenever that may be. I don't know when it's going to be, but whenever it is, I have an idea for it. So we'll let you guys know about that. But until then, hook 'em horns, enjoy your night, and we'll see you next time on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Thank you guys for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. But for right now, we're out. Peace.
I sort of like that idea as an outro, by the way. Like you saying, there's a lot going on.